Hello and welcome to session number 17 of FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers. My name is Tim Jones. In today's session, we're going to finish creating the data-driven navigation scheme we began in session 15. Our data-driven navigation scheme works for all the device types we anticipate connecting to our database, including desktop, iPad, iPhone, and WebDirect. It uses very few scripts, only 2 so far, and meets all our principal navigation needs, as well as navigation between related records. The final touch is to implement a back button, which we will do in this session. And here's how we will do it. The key to adding a back button is tracking the layouts that each user has visited. For that, we'll write a script that will create and update a global variable that lists the name of every layout the user has visited. Every time they navigate to a layout, we add the layout's name to the top of that list. If they click the back button, we remove the current layout name from the top of the list and then just go to the previous one. Let's get started. Here's the animal care database we've been building up, and we'll jump into our script workspace. To create a new script, I'm going to make a copy or a duplicate of the script template so that we get all of our standard code. And let's call this new script track layout history. Its purpose will be to track user navigation through layouts. It will be called by our go to layout script, and it won't have any expected incoming script parameters. Okay. We actually won't need to call our little script startup script, the one that sets error capture on and allow user abort off. So I'll get rid of that or delete that line of code. And instead, we'll use a set variable script step. SV, set variable. And I'll hit the space bar to bring up the options dialog box. We're going to call this new variable $$ layout history. The 2 $, of course, indicates that we want this to be a global variable. That is, a variable that exists throughout the entire file and does not cease to exist until this database file gets closed by the user who's in it. So these are session-specific variables. And I know I'm going to need to use this variable name again and again, so I'm going to highlight it and copy it so I can paste it as needed. For the value to give to this variable, we want it to be an ongoing or running log or tally, if you will, of the layouts that the user has visited. And we want it to be in a list type of a format, a carriage return delimited list. There's a function we've learned early on called the list function that's perfect for creating lists of things. And I like to break it up like this. And the first thing that we want to add to this list is the name of the layout that the user will have just gone to. And there's a get function that allows us to ascertain or get the layout name that the user is currently on. But since we want this to be an ongoing or running list, we're going to then append to the bottom of that what was already on the list. So I'll paste in the variable name, $$ layout history. In other words, the effect of running this script will be to add to the layout history variable, to the top of the layout history variable, the name of the layout that the user will have just navigated to. Say OK, and I'll save that script. Then we're going to call that script, and let me move it into position into the navigation folder, more where it belongs. There we go. We're going to call that script from our go to layout script. In the go to layout script, let's add right in here an if statement that checks to see if the attempt to go to such and such a layout was successful or not. Because if we've made some mistake in the way we named our layouts, or if we've made some mistake in the navigation table, and the attempt to go to the layout whose name is the concoction of the table that was passed in the script parameter, and the view that was passed in, and the device that the user is on. Remember, we set this device in our initial, or in our onOpen script with this detect device script. Then we don't want to track going to an invalid layout. We don't want to track a failed attempt to go to a layout. So we're going to insert a little error trapping routine that says if, and then not get last error. Now, this statement would take a lot of explanation, but essentially the get last error function, its job is to return the error code number of the most recently performed script step, which would have been this one right here. Okay, and the script step error code numbers are 0 if there was no problem whatsoever, if the previously performed script step performed as it should have, or -1 if it's an unknown error, or then on up into the hundreds. There are many error code numbers. Now, if we keep in mind that in Boolean logic, the number 0 is the equivalent of the concept of false, and any other number is the equivalent of the concept of true, then this makes sense. We can check for an error being thrown by the last line of code using that get last error. We don't need to check and see, was it 0, or was it 401, no records found, or was it 105, layout missing, or something like that. We can just say, hey, if it wasn't a 0, or if it was a 0, depending on whether you're checking for success or failure. We're checking for success. We're checking to see, was this statement successfully performed? And so we'll say, if it didn't fail, essentially, is what we're doing here with if not get last error. Not simply reverses a Boolean logic to the opposite, kind of like a minus sign in front of a number turns it into a negative number. And if the previous step was successful, if there was no problem error code generated, then we'd want to perform the script of tracking that movement that the user just took. And we'll call our track layout history script that we just wrote. There. I'll add, just for nicety, making it look nicer, a blank line there, and I'll save that script. Okay. And we'll close up these scripts, close the script workspace, and let's open up the script debugger and data viewer so we can keep an eye on things as they happen. Now, we've already assigned the script go to layout to all of the buttons on this button bar up here. So watch as I actually, let's close and reopen the whole database, and we'll see it build itself up from the beginning. Okay. I think that's the one. All right, and so with the script debugger open, when you open a database, any script that's triggered automatically by the on first window open script trigger gets interrupted by the script debugger, so we can walk through it step by step. We already know about these scripts, what they do. We wrote them earlier on in our sessions, so I'll perform them, but without stepping into them. So initialize all our global variables, then detect what device the user's on. You'll notice that that results in a variable $$ device being created that recognized that I was on, or that I connected from a desktop style device as opposed to an iPad or an iPhone. And now we're going to step into this script here. Okay, so that script passed in some values as a script parameter. Let's see what they were. There, we got a parameter list. It passed in the word home and the word menu. As I double click here, you can see that it's in a list type of form, carriage return delimited list. And we'll step into the two statements that are going to parse up that carriage return delimited list into their individual elements. Home in the variable called table, and menu in the variable called view. And now we come to our go to layout script step that's going to go and try to send the user to a layout whose name is home underscore menu underscore desktop. See, all the pieces that this line of code here is referring to are in place now. And I'll step into, and that will be a successful navigation because we do have a layout called home underscore menu underscore desktop. Now comes our error trapping routine. If there wasn't a problem with performing that last statement, then perform our track layout history script. And we'll step into that one. And it's just got this one line of code in it that says, make or edit a variable called $$ layout history, grabbing the current layout name and adding it to the top of the existing layout history variable. Now, since it doesn't exist, of course, it's just going to add it to the very top line. And as I double click on this variable, you can see, yep, we captured the name of the layout that we just went to. Fantastic. We'll go ahead and finish up our script, which is just an end if, and then an adjust window. Okay, so our layout history is being tracked. Now I'll close the script debugger and randomly navigate around through a bunch of other layouts, and you'll watch this layout history variable grow and grow. I'll stretch it out so you can see it more clearly. Let's say I go to the customers layout. I'll click the customers button, which takes us to the customer list desktop layout. We can see that here, and we can see that its name was gathered into that variable. The data viewer displays it left to right, but if I double click on it, you can see that it really is carriage return delimited. And if I drill into one of these records, that takes us to the customer form desktop layout. And if I click the more button where we see our spillover in the form of this popover button, our spillover layouts that didn't make it to the kind of the prime seats, the VIP seats up here, we can go to any one of these layouts and its name is added to the top of the layout history variable. I'll go to vets, drill into a vet record. There we go. So we've got an ongoing building list of layout names in this layout history variable. It just gets longer and longer as a user navigates around through their session. It's nothing to worry about it getting too long. This is just text. It's very, very lightweight. So it's certainly not going to cause any memory overflows or anything like that. Let's get back into our script workspace and now start to add in the script that will allow the users to go back. We'll once again duplicate our script template and we'll position that down in the folder where it belongs. And let's call this new script, go to previous layout. And its purpose is going obviously to be to navigate back to the layout most recently visited. Okay, it'll be also called by our go to layout script, but only when the destination table is set to back. And I'll describe that again in a moment, just to refresh from our last session. And for expected parameters, this script will not expect any incoming script parameters either. Again, in this case, we won't need to call our little script startup script. So I'll delete that. And instead, we'll make a routine that will peel off the first entry in the list of that layout history list, and then go to the second layout that was in the list. However, as we're backing up, or as we're allowing our users to back up through the layouts, we do not want to let them fall backwards off the slide. And so we're going to put a little error trapping routine here, or a little buffer, if you will, that says, hey, you know what? If the number of entries in that layout history variable is greater than 1, then go ahead and let them back up. But if it's not greater than 1, if they've backed up already so far to where they're back to the home layout, then don't let them fall backwards off the slide, so to speak. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, if this if condition is true, is we're going to modify our layout history variable. We use the set variable script step to do that. Set variable can be used to create a variable or to set a different value into an existing variable. I'll hit the space bar, I'll paste the name of my layout history variable, And for the value, again, we want to strip off the first entry. There are many different calculation approaches that we could use for this. The one I'm using these days is the middle values function. I like middle values here. It seems to be fairly clear and easy, though again, this could be done in a variety of different ways. So middle values says, all right, where's the value list of text that you're trying to grab some middle values out of? And I just pasted in our layout history variable. And then where do you want to start grabbing? Well, let's say we start grabbing at the second value and we go through to the end. Now, since we never know how long the layout history variable will be, we'll have to calculate that with our value count function. We'll just say, hey, count how many items there are in the layout history variable and go through to that many. So if there were 15 items in the list, then we would say, let's set the layout history variable, right? Because that's what we're doing here. We're setting the value of the layout history variable to be equal to what's in the layout history variable, but only starting at item number 2 and going through item number the end, 15 in my example. That then has lopped off the first entry from the layout history variable. Then we'll simply use a go to layout script step, GTL, hit return, click original layout and choose layout name by calculation, because we're going to be calculating the name of the layout that we want to go to by calculation. And we're simply going to say, hey, send them to the layout whose name is at the top of the list of that layout history variable. Now we can't just put layout history because that's a long list of items. Rather, we're going to use the get value function. The get value function returns one specific item out of a value list of items. Get value says, all right, where's the value list? Of course, that's our layout history variable. And which one do you want me to return to you? We want to return the first one, the one that's at the top of the list. Okay. And that's it for our go to previous layout script. I'll save that script. And then we'll go back and edit our go to layout script a little bit more. Here, we're going to say, all right, we can't just assume that they're going to be taken to a layout, because what if the button that they clicked was the back button? Well, here I need to interrupt the script workspace a little bit to show you our navigation table. You'll recall that in this navigation table that we built in the previous session, actually in session number 15, we had made an entry where the label was going to be back, and never mind. Where the label was going to be back, and the destination or the target table was going to be back, as opposed to all the other buttons where the label has something to do with what table we're going to be sending them to, and the table or the destination field value has the name of the table, and then the view field value has the desired view if we want to send them to a layout that's going to show them these vet records in list view or in form view and so forth. So the back button doesn't have a view because obviously there's no back table, but we're going to just check to see, hey, did the button they clicked pass in the table name or the destination name of back? Now let me go back to our home layout. Right? And that button right there is the one that's assigned to get its values from the first record in that navigation table that you were just looking at. So if I were to click this button, it would try to pass into our go to layout script, would try to pass into it the table name of back. And so here, let's insert blank line, and then let's say if that table variable, now that we've parsed up our parameter list, says back, that means, oh, they clicked the back button. And in that case, we would want to perform our script of go to previous layout. There. Okay. So if they clicked a button that tries to take them to the table, the so-called back table, of which there's not really a back table, that means that they really wanted to go to the previous layout. Okay, good. Else, let's throw an else in here, like so. then we'd want to do all this other stuff instead. So I'm just going to take the end if that was created when I created this if statement and drag this end if down below the stuff that should happen otherwise. So if they tried to go to the back table, so to speak, then we run this script. Otherwise, we do all this other business right here. That is, we send them to the layout whose name and view are described in those variables above. And if that was not a problem, if there was no error thrown by that go to layout, then we'll run our track layout history script. Regardless whether they went forward or backward, we'd then want to adjust the window to resize to fit. Okay, we'll save the script. And I can close up these scripts, close up the script workspace. And let's go ahead and get our data viewer open again. Good, it came out wide again. And I'll test out the back button. As I click the back button here, it should take us, we're on the vet form. Oh, no, we're not. Oh, I navigated to home manually. Oh, now my layout history is a bit of a mess because I navigated from layout mode apart from using the navigation bar. Okay, well, forgive me for that. Let me navigate manually, likewise, kind of behind the back of our navigation scheme back to the vet form desktop layout. So our layout history variable is actually correct. And so now as I hit back, it should modify this variable, stripping the first entry off. Let me double click here so you can see it's going to strip this first entry off, and then it'll go to the next one in the list. Let's see if it works. Clicking the back button, it stripped vet form desktop off and took us to vet list desktop. If I go back again, it should take us to vendor list desktop. Let's see, back. Yep, we're at vendor list desktop and so on, back. And the user can just walk their way back through the entire history of layouts that they've visited. Now that the layout history variable only has one item in it, clicking the back button will not do anything, again, because we didn't want to fall off the back of the slide. So you see back doesn't do anything. As I navigate to other layouts, the layout history variable builds itself up again, and we can use back, back, back to continue backwards through the list. Please note that it does not remember what found sets necessarily that you had when you were back there. Although FileMaker keeps in mind, you know, if you have a found set of only a certain number of records, then and you haven't done anything else during that session in that window to change it, then the found set and the sort order should be the same when you go back. If a script has changed it or something like that, then the back button is not taking you back to the previous context completely. It's only taking you back to the previous layout. This is just a layout navigation scheme having nothing to do with what records were found or what sort order they were in or anything like that. Okay, so that's my data-driven navigation scheme. Let's get back into our slides here and let's see how we can kind of put it all together. So as a summary, since this is the third of a three session series, let's quickly summarize it. The first thing we did was we built a table called nav, where we entered one record per destination or layout that we want included on the navigation bar. In that table, we created fields for the label that we want to appear on the nav bar, the table that the user should be taken to if they click that button, the view of that table of records that we want to present, usually either form view or list view, and lastly, a sort order field that we can use to control the order these records appear in on the nav bar. Next, on the relationships graph, we added a cross-product join from the nav table to the table occurrences of every destination table. Now that means that every record in the nav table is related to every record in each other table, so that those nav records are available no matter where we are in the system. And lastly, we applied a sort by the order field to each relationship. Thirdly, we placed a button bar on every destination layout with enough segments for a back button for each of our most popular layouts, a popover button for the additional layouts, and an exit button. Now for the button label on each segment, we wrote a formula that uses the get nth record function to fetch the value from the label field of the corresponding record in the nav table. For example, on the first segment of the button bar, we grab the label from record number 1 of the nav table. The second segment of the button bar gets its value from record number 2 of the nav table, and so on, which was why that sort order in the relationships was so useful, because it allows us to control the order in which the nav table records should be presented on the button bars that are running across the top of each of our layouts. Now for the button action, each segment runs our go to layout script, passing into the script the destination table and desired view, which are both pulled from the corresponding record in the nav table and are passed in as a return delimited list to make them easy to parse or separate in the script itself. Lastly, we named our layouts following a very specific pattern of table underscore view underscore device. And then you saw today the scripts that we used to kind of make it all happen. And this gives you a very easy to update navigation system to your FileMaker database applications, such that if we wanted to change the order of the buttons on the nav bar or change their functionality where they take the user, we can simply go to our nav table and make those changes, and the changes are reflected universally throughout all of the user-facing layouts in the system. Okay, are there any questions about what we've looked at today?